He's got a xylophone, and she's got a butcher knife.
And Kylie has an old school cheese grater.
Cheese grater on her arm.
On her arm. And I was like, motherfucker, that is the coolest thing. Evil Dead Rise. You didn't do the cheese grater first.
No.
Housebound did the cheese grater.
Housebound, yes.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Creature Podcast. I am Michael.
And I'm Lindsay.
We are gathered here today, once again, to discuss another movie.
Yes.
Today we're going to be talking about 2014's Housebound. This is a New Zealand movie, written, edited, and directed by Gerard Johnstone. It's his first movie. And he's done a bunch of other, I don't watch a lot of New Zealand content. You do a little bit more than...
More than you.
More than me. But he then went on to do, for Blumhouse, Megan, which was a huge hit. I didn't know that he directed
I didn't either.
That was the, once every 2 years, Blumhouse has something that really hits, and then they put bullshit out. I mean, it's all bullshit, but... So he's now going to be doing Megan 2.0. He basically has just made his nut off of Megan. But this is his first one, and it's rad. Lindsay. Is that bad? Rad?
No, I love it.
I love this movie. Tell me about it.
Okay, I want to have an observation that I've noticed. We are doing only fringe horror. I
mean, that's what I like.
Yeah.
I mean, we started with fucking Night Swim.
Well, that was a practice episode, so it doesn't count.
That's not canon, everybody. Disregard Spooky Pool.
No, I was looking at the things we have planned to come after, and I feel still like even the mainstream ones are still fringe horror.
It's what we tend to gravitate towards, and they also tend to lean into horror comedies, which I think is the best thing in the world. Other people don't like the peanut butter in their chocolate like that.
I love peanut butter in my chocolate.
I think
I love a horror comedy. I don't want to watch something that's just gore and fear and no, it's got to be funny.
It's got to be funny. Agreed.
And it's near and dear to me because it's the same thing. It's eliciting an involuntary response. One is laughing, the other is screaming. It's all about building tension and dropping tension.
And releasing the tension.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a beautiful subgenre.
Right. So then, speaking to that, this movie is a horror comedy.
Very much.
And it is very funny, but it is also really subtle in its humor.
Yes. And I forgot how effective some of the jump scares are in this movie.
Yes, it has jump scares.
I don't like jump scares because I think they're cheap, but these are effective. And I peed myself a little watching this last night because I was like, I forgot that happened. We'll get there.
So unfortunately, because the jokes are really subtle, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to really impart how funny this movie actually is. So you need to go watch it if you're interested.
I mean, go watch all the movies we talk about.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Okay.
Then come
so
back.
No. Finish the episode.
Stay. Then watch them.
Then do it. Listen to all the shows.
And then re-listen to the episode.
Yeah, if you could do it at least 5 times, hit like, subscribe, put the thumbs up, all that stuff. For the love of God.
Producer Jamie gonna produce.
Okay, so beginning of the movie, we're in a strip mall parking lot. There's a guy and a girl, their face covered up, and they're going to break into an ATM.
Yeah, they look like in their very early 20s.
Early 20s, yeah.
Punks.
Well, the guy's got some sort of hammer, and he's just banging on the ATM, just trying to get it to open up.
Yeah.
And then he manages to bounce off the ATM and knock the fucking shit out of himself, completely, right between the eyes, down on his back.
Hilarious and jump scare in itself because it looks deadly.
Yeah,
it looks like he fucking killed himself with his hammer.
It did. So then the girl puts some sort of bomb into the ATM to blow it up.
Fuck, and she drags his knocked out body a little bit back and puts basically a homemade explosive in the hole there. Big explosion. Yep. And she's able to get the long money box.
Yeah, the money box out.
And has to drag her now knocked out.
It's a very funny little scene where she's dragging the guy across the parking lot.
Static camera as she just goes through frame dragging his unconscious body.
So then as she's trying to leave, the very low car gets stuck on a speed bump. And
she's high-centered on a speed
bump.
Yeah,
she's just stuck on a speed bump, so she can't get out of this parking lot.
She just says, fuck, as the sirens are closing in.
Yeah, so we cut to a court, and she's getting sentenced. Lawyer's trying to get her into, a rehab home.
Yeah.
And the judge is like, we've already done that. That's not going to work. She needs stability. We're going to send her home on house arrest for 8 months.
Right. One of her lawyer's excuses is like her behavior was coming off of methamphetamine and alcohol use, so she was desperate because of her addictions, which doesn't play a lot into this, but it kind of, she's been through home after home after home, and she's being sent back to...
Well, I mean, it sounds like her lawyer is used to making up stories for her, because, like, there's some other moments that says later in the movie that she's like, well, I only did that, you know, because everybody does that to get what I needed to get.
100%. It could have been, like, because it's not like she's going through withdrawal or anything. No. It could have just been a sympathy thing.
It was just to get her a lighter sentence. Yeah. Right. She's with some officers. We don't yet know what kind of officers they are, but they're dropping her off at her mom's house. And as they're talking about, like, you want to go in, they're rear-ended by her mom in the driveway of her own house.
Again, another jump scare. Like, it's loud, mid-sentence. And this house is, I mean, this is New Zealand. We have, like, a drone shot of them driving to the house, and it is like...
It's in the country.
It's country. It's far away from a lot of stuff. It's kind of a big cottage-looking house.
Craftsman style or something like that, yeah. So we've learned it's a parole officer and a security officer, and they're setting her up with a ankle monitor, and then they start testing the limits so that she can see where all her boundaries are in the house.
And if she tries to cut it, it will also send off a...
Yep. If she tampers with it, if she goes over the line, it will send an alert to his phone. He's got...
Him being Amos, he's one of the two officers there. He's basically just the security guy, and he becomes a big main part character. Of this movie. Yeah, main character.
We learn that when we get into the house that Mom talks nonstop. She just constantly talks gibberish about whatever is on her mind.
Yeah, she seems like a nervous woman, and she seems like in order to kind of quell those nerves, she has to just talk.
Yeah.
It's gossipy stuff. It's, you know, this person down the street did that and whatever. And
right.
She's also in the house is the stepfather, Graham, who doesn't talk at all.
Not one bit.
Our main character's name is Kylie.
Kylie, yeah.
She says of Graham that he is a cabbage in a polar fleece. That's how she describes this man. And he just seems like a rugged, kind of quiet, bearded guy. I did want to mention the actress who plays Kylie is awesome. Her real name is Morgana O'Reilly.
Yes.
And this is the perfect Morgana O'Reilly. She's got raven black hair and eyeliner. Like, she looks like a Morgana. But her full name is Morgana Le Fay Naomi Jane O'Reilly.
Where'd you find that?
On her Wikipedia.
Okay. Morgana Le Fay, right? Okay.
Exactly. Morgana Le Fay. She has a cool mom, apparently, because Morgana Le Fay.
King Arthur.
Let's go, King Arthur.
Yep.
So that's all. I just wanted to say that. Okay. Say that name out loud.
Well, so we see Kylie go outside for a smoke, and then we get introduced to the neighbor who is burning crap in his yard.
So I have a lot of sympathy for Kylie at this point of looking over and having a weird old neighbor burning garbage in their yard, because I have that as well. You and I both live next to people who burn shit in the middle of the night all the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Jamie didn't know that.
I did not.
It's sometimes really just staring mean at the fire while drinking beers, and I'm like, please don't shoot me tonight. But yeah, this is a creepy hoarder guy who's burning trash in his like junkyard next.
And he's meant to like make us look at him and think, oh, there's a creepy neighbor. You know? So later that night, you know, Kylie's trying to get the telephone and her mom won't let her. And so she's like bored somewhere, and she turns on the radio, and it turns out her mom is calling into a paranormal radio show.
Yes.
And she's telling a story about how she encountered a tattered, faded white sheet that disappeared.
In the basement. Some time ago.
Yes.
When the mom gets off the phone, Kylie's kind of like waiting for her and makes fun of her for this.
She does.
The mom's like, well, you must have some selective memory, because when you were a little girl, you were scared to death of the haunting in this house as well.
Yeah, so this has been going on for a while. Mom's been assuming this house is haunted for a long time. So then there's this nice little funny scene where Kylie's in the bathroom. She's urinating, and she starts to hear noises in the ceiling, and every time she hears noises, she stops peeing, and it goes quiet. And then she starts again, and the noises return.
Her pelvic floor is great, man.
Her pelvic floor
She's got the Kegels down.
And eventually we watch, and we travel with the ceiling, like as the noise is going across the ceiling, and it gets to the middle, and it stops, and then she just starts peeing. She's like, whatever, and it just continues on.
Yeah,
you know?
This character is awesome because she faces everything with just quiet rage first. It doesn't matter if it's the creepy neighbor who's giving her the side eye, or if it's like weird noises or whatever. She just looks at it and mad. Yeah. And then goes from there. So she's just
an angry young woman.
It's kind of like our dog. One of our dogs.
Everything is out to get her.
Everything is out to get her.
Yeah. All right. So the next day, after she finally gets out of bed, somewhere around midday, She attempts to get online, but mom's got dial-up, and then the computer, like, literally explodes.
Yeah, it blows a circuit.
Well, no, it looks like the
It
actual
does smoke.
PC...
No, this whole
blow
house
up.
is wired like bonkers.
It is.
The lights go out, shit sparks,
Yeah.
and whatnot. We spent a lot of time in the basement at the circuit breaker.
Yes.
This is what lures people down into this creepy basement.
Because of the power, yeah. So Kylie's bored, and she goes exploring in the house, and then she decides to go down to the basement. I'm thinking because of her mother's story the night before about the haunting in the basement.
Right.
And she, like, is thumbing through books, and she sees Sunshine Grove stamped inside the books.
This is the first time you see the Sunshine Grove stamp, and it's kind of a...
It looks like something you would get at half-price books or a used bookstore, you know, where you
Yeah.
got a book from.
And this movie does a really excellent job of setting these little pieces up and then leaving them alone.
They just leave them
They
alone.
don't guide you by the hand. The creepy old neighbor disappears from this movie for
For a
a
while.
long time.
Yeah.
And then the Sunshine Grove thing, you're like...
Also disappears.
It disappears. And when it comes back up, you're like, oh, yeah, I had forgotten about that.
It's a really nicely put together way of storytelling
Yeah.
because you are getting something introduced and it's not like hitting you over the head with
Exactly.
what this means.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, this is something. And then here's another thing. And this could or could not actually come back for payoff or not,
Yeah,
you know?
very few things don't pay off,
Yeah.
but there's a few sprinkled in there kind of on purpose, I think.
Yeah.
To like, go like, no, this wasn't part of the puzzle.
Right. But
It's
that's
awesome.
what puzzles are for.
Yeah.
So when she's down there looking at the books, the doorbell rings and then it turns out she's visited by a counselor.
Yes.
And his name is Dennis. So Kylie's just a disrespectful asshole the entire
She's
time.
a total bitch in this
She's
movie.
total bitch this entire movie.
yeah, pretty much the
entire movie. Like up until the end.
And this is at this scene, it's fair to call her that because she has like, mom is coming in with arms full of groceries and Kylie doesn't get up. She's just on the floor drinking beer, and the mom realizes that she has eaten
An entire
meatloaf that was for dinner, and she's just like,
Mom's
well,
like,
I
where's
guess
the meatloaf? And Kylie's like, I ate some of it. And she's like, there's nothing left. And she's
yeah,
just doesn't
and she's
care.
like, I guess I have to go back
Mom's
out
like,
to
you
the
let
store.
the fire out, and she trashed the kitchen. It was just like really disrespectful. She's been here for less than 24 hours.
Yeah, and there is like the fire thing. So I'm watching this. I'm like, okay, so letting the fire go out, is that common in New Zealand that the people out here are still just using fires to heat their homes? But that comes back up.
Right, because
later.
the furnace is broken.
All of these things are like,
Yeah.
the furnace leads to a thing.
It does, yes. And then her mother comes in later and she's like, it's time for us to watch Coronation Street. That's like the longest running television show outside of Doctor Who in history.
Okay, I think I've heard of it, but it's like a soap opera.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
assuming.
it's like a primetime soap opera,
Okay.
yeah. But it's been on for a million years. And she's like, Wednesdays and Thursdays are Coronation Street nights, and it's time for us. And she's like, just doesn't respond to her mom.
Well,
and her mom has no real need to force the issue, so she tries to go watch it on.
But it's so sad because she's standing there and she's like, Kylie, it's just an hour and then you can have the TV back. And she goes, please, and her voice like tremors.
Yeah.
And Kylie picks up the remote and then just turns up the volume.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
What a dick.
God, what a dick.
What a dick. Yeah. So her mom and Graham go upstairs and try to watch it on a rabbit ear TV.
Yeah,
And they
no.
can't really get a reception. And I love this line where she's like, she'll learn one way or another. She'll have to about that it's her house and that she's not going to be taken advantage of.
She also says, Graham, you could say something to her. And Graham just turns and looks at her
And
like,
Graham still hasn't spoken in this movie yet.
yeah, Graham still hasn't said a word.
So later at night?
That night
wakes
she's
up.
sleeping and a shadow passes in
Right.
front of her.
And then the
she's
computer
not in her bedroom. She's falling
She's falling asleep on the couch, watching TV. And we see somebody's in the room, and then the computer pops on.
Yeah.
And then the weirdly howling cats.
Yeah, I mean,
it's supposed to be haunty stuff.
no,
you know?
it's funny because the sound design in this movie is incredibly important too. That's part of the jump scares is the big booms and everything. But also, it's very good at night out here to go, what is the house creaking? What is the wind blowing? And now there's these cats outside. So there's constant noise and you're like, what do I need to be paying attention to here? And you
Right.
just can't figure out.
Right. Well, so she slaps off the computer, and then we hear, hello, Moto.
Which is so, again, weird hairs
Yeah.
on the back of my, because you forgot that you knew that
That song, the Hello
incessant-
Moto, yeah. When the Motorola originally came
Yeah.
out, this was a decade
So
ago.
I have been having this movie, the Hello Moto song pop up, the dial-up tones from a computer,
Yep.
and I'm just like, it's 1996 again.
Right. Well, so she realizes her cell phone's missing. So she is...
So it is her cell phone,
It's
right?
her cell phone. Remember that there was a scene at the dinner table the first night she was there, and her mom was like, "Oh, you have the new iPhone,
That's
the
right.
Apple,
And
the
she
iPhone,"
kept
and she's like,
saying
"It's not an iPhone. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
an iPhone."
That's
Over
right.
and over, mom refuses to believe it's not an iPhone.
Right.
Yeah. But It's
So
a
now
Motorola.
she's running around the house trying to find...
Right.
And it leads
she
her
ends
to
up in the basement,
Yeah.
and the light goes out, and you can see her face. She's trying to convince... I love that she's trying to convince herself there's nothing going on, but she's a little bit scared.
Yeah, this movie does this perfect job of trying to break through her mask that she's built
that
for this
anger that
world.
she lives behind.
And she's just very desperately holding on to her cynicism.
There's a lot that's going on in her facial expressions.
She's very good. It's
Yes.
Again, that's why you got to go watch this movie. It's just like she will just like give a withering look, and it's so funny.
It is very funny. Yes. As she's like trying to convince herself it's everything, her eyes are closed or something, and we see someone in the shadows. So she gets a flashlight and she goes to investigate, and she sees a man-shaped thing in a tattered sheet.
She's now surrounded by things with sheets.
But then it falls over towards her.
It goes at her.
And it turns out to be a Jesus statue that's covered in a
statue of
sheet.
Jesus. And she just goes, Jesus. Which is stupid, but it worked.
Well, as she's standing there, her ankle monitor beeps, and she looks down at her ankle monitor.
And this is where I peed a little.
Me too. This is the best jump scare in the movie. And then a hand jumps out from underneath like a cabinet and grabs her ankle.
And it has got like long, gross fingernails.
I mean, obviously, like if you guys have seen people under the stairs, it's 100% people under the stairs.
But there's a couple things this movie keeps doing that I love. One is letting the audience see something, and then the character notices it out of the side of their eye, but then it's gone. So we have gotten a better view of what this thing is running around the movie than the characters do. And you're like, get out. There is something
There's something
going
down
on.
there, yeah.
So when the ankle monitor beeps, it's weird because she's not outside. She's not by a boundary. So as a viewer, you're looking down at the ankle monitor and you're like, oh, did she find some weird line? And that's when the hand comes
Well, so
out.
now, like, it just makes me think that the basement actually extends further than the property line. Yeah.
They don't really expand on that,
They
but
don't.
what we'll find is that, well, we'll get there.
Yeah. So she basically falls backwards onto a pile of junk. She gets covered in a net. She starts running up the
She's
stairs.
shook.
And then her mom is on the stairs.
Yeah. The mom is there going, hey, you may not realize this, but some people in this house have to work. She's being scolded.
No, she's like she's worked herself up from the TV show and everything to like scold her. Yeah. Her
So
daughter.
now that the mom's worked up and the daughter's, scared, they kind of have a team up here for the first time in this movie where it's like, because someone is in this house.
Right. So Kylie and mom hear the loud banging and they sneak around looking for it.
Shadow.
And of course, mom can't help herself. She keeps talking, and Kylie keeps shushing her.
But this is a fun little, they're like got back to the second story staircase, and they can see the shadow of a man walking around upstairs. And Kylie grabs like a walking stick.
Some sort of walking stick.
And the mom is just like, oh, don't use that. Uncle Elvin gave that to us. It's actual Cameroon wood or whatever. And she's like, then it won't break. Then when she starts wailing on this figure in the house, it breaks after 4 hits. And it's such a fast, subtle joke that, it's what this movie keeps doing over and over again. It's this physical comedy that you're like, oh, that's a little... They plant a seed over here, and then this little joke that they almost don't even care. It breaks after 4 hits. She throws it down in disgust and grabs something else to hit the guy.
But then it turns out it's Amos.
It turns out the intruder's Amos.
Yeah, and he's like, I got a signal on the ankle bracelet.
And she's like, oh, you were just in the neighborhood?
And he's like, I live in the neighborhood. And he pulls open his jacket and he's wearing pajamas.
He's wearing his PJs. So Amos is like, now we know he's like right there.
He's right here, yeah.
Whenever that ankle monitor goes off, he's like minutes away.
Well, so like she's trying to convince Amos there's somebody in the house. And mom is like, no, there's nobody in the house. The house is haunted.
And Amos is instantly a ghost hunter.
Instantly. He's like, I've got EKG meters. I'm going to set this place up. I believe in the paranormal only. Like, it's like, what the fuck, man? Why would you go immediately ghosts in this house before a fucking intruder?
Well, it's just that's Amos's character. It's like this movie also walks the line of coincidence in a way that you're like, is this set up enough?
That's fine though. It's a fun journey.
Fine.
Yeah.
So when the mom's like, it's haunted, he immediately whips out a tape recorder and starts going, this is the time and this is the place, and starts asking questions to do an EVP type.
Yeah, he's trying to get a recording on somebody to catch it on the tape recorder, but when he plays it back, there's nothing there. So then he starts asking mom some questions. We learn that the previous owner was a B&B 20 years ago. She's been in the house for like 20 years. It used to be a B&B. Amos makes a bunch of plans to set up equipment pro bono to advance paranormal research.
Yeah, so there's going to be like cameras. He's going to be over there with there's meters to detect like cold spots, stuff like that.
And Kylie's just like the entire time she's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
She just doesn't understand what just happened and why Amos is just suddenly on board.
She's going to want to get out of here though real soon because the fucking creepiest thing in this movie happens next.
The next day, Amos is setting up cameras and Miriam, which by the way, that's mom's name, is Miriam. comments that Graham has hit wires, like, before. Like, her husband, he's been trying to, like, do some housework, and he was drilling in the walls, and he hit wires even though the circuit breaker was off, and he's like, I turned everything off. It's going to be fine. And then he literally blows himself up.
He almost electrocutes himself.
Yeah, and he's like, you got to get your electricity figured out.
Again, the house's electricity is constantly blowing and sparking.
So then it's a stormy night, and Kylie's sleeping,
and you just hear, it's nice to know I could still see you.
Creepy Teddy Ruxpin wakes up and
turns
starts
over, and there's
speaking.
a ragged-ass Teddy Ruxpin saying things like, I can hear you breathing.
I can hear you breath.
And
yes.
it is like...
Your breath. I can hear your breath.
It is like fucking terrifying.
It is terrifying because he's also doing it like a really guttural voice.
Yeah, it's like it's creepier when you hear the real one later on.
Oh, God.
It's like a slowed down, altered version. Like the tape is dying or something.
She actually like asks it, what the fuck did you just say? And then it continues to speak. So then she just beats it up. Like she starts punching it. She's holding it and she's punching the bear.
And she takes it downstairs and throws it in the fire.
Right. So she's like, I didn't. At the end, she's like, I just wanted to be friends. I would never do this to a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's laying in the fire and it goes, I would never do this to a friend.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking creepy. So then she calls Amos, and Amos comes with a document, the messed up.
First, it cuts to the next day, and she's in the shower, and she screams because of Teddy Ruxpin's in the shower with her. Burnt up.
So then she calls Amos.
The Teddy Ruxpin, and then it showing back up in the shower, has, I think, broken Kylie of being like, something's going on here. I need to get the fuck out of this house.
Yes. So Amos comes and documents, and then he decides that she made the entire incident up. So now he's no longer on team paranormal. Now he's like, she's lying for attention. And it's like a weird, for me, I didn't understand that because like he was so pro 24 hours before, and now all of a sudden he's decided she's lying.
Well, it's because it's a very extreme thing that just happened. And Kylie just basically got informed of what paranormal shit is. So he thinks that she's able to now manufacture a way to get out.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, so we're having another meeting with a counselor, and she's talking to him about the haunting, and he tells her this is funny, he tells her to exercise and go to correspondence school. Because, he's like, it's all in your head. Yep, So as she's reading this brochure...
This is another wonderful moment.
Yes, about correspondence school. She's up in her room, and the closet door creaks open. She just goes and gets the tool and removes the door from the hinges.
She gets
and just,
so mad. The door, we're seeing the door open in a mirror behind her, and she's not even looking at it. She just closes her eyes, pissed off, because there's a creaky door. So she takes it off, sits down, and then a
cabinet door in the closet.
Tiny door inside the closet opens up.
It is very funny. So as she goes in there to investigate, she finds old
her childhood stuff,
and then she brings out tap shoes, and
I think this is beautiful.
This is so cute. She puts them on and she starts tap dancing in her room,
and she's really good.
She's very good,
and it's this glimmer of something she enjoyed in her childhood before all the stuff happened that made her put the walls up.
Right, exactly. So then Graham shows up and scares the crap out of her because he actually speaks to her. She freaks out on him, and then he asks her for help, and she tells him to piss off. But then she shows up in the basement.
She realized how harsh she was.
Yeah, and to help him.
It's just another setup I love where he's like, I just need to glue this together. If you just hold this part, I hold this part, and we just stand here until it sets. And she's like, how long
is it going to take?
He's like, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so they're now two people who won't talk to each other are staring at each other
for 10 minutes.
Yeah. But then Graham
starts talking about, she starts making all these comments about her mom's hoarding thing. All this stuff in the basement, why it's all there. So he's telling her some stuff, all the stuff was already here when Mom bought the house.
The people had to leave fast. They left it all here.
Yes.
And it was.
And she suspects now that it wasn't a bed and breakfast after some comments
because he said all this stuff was probably donated. And she's like, why would you donate to a bed and breakfast,
correct.
Graham?
Yes. Yeah.
And so she's realizing it wasn't a bed
and breakfast. So she starts digging through all the boxes, and we see, again, it's Sunshine Grove. We see, medical records and things like that.
Research scene.
And so she starts Googling Sunshine Grove, and we turn out it says Halfway House of Horrors.
Yes. There's a bunch of files in the basement with kids' pictures, and they all have our problems. Yes. And in particular, what finally shut down this halfway house was the murder of a young girl.
Yes. Well, Elizabeth something. Yeah.
So
a girl was stabbed 67 times with a meat fork.
Yep.
In her bedroom.
She was beaten and bit.
Yeah.
Also.
Beaten and bit also, yes. So that the biting is important.
Yeah.
So she calls Amos, and Amos is back on board now that he knows that a murder took place in the house. He's back to paranormal. So she's talking to the counselor and a lawyer, trying to get herself transferred. out of this house. She's like, I gotta fucking get out of here. I cannot stay here. Something's going on. I want out. And they're like, well, we can't get you out of here unless you're a danger to yourself or others. So her mom walks in and she has a big fit. And so she like smashes a tray and then destroys a metal laundry holder. Like, like those wood accordion ones, but I guess this one was made out of metal.
Yeah. It's just like the metal thing to hang clothes on.
Yeah. And so she destroys it and then runs out of the room. And then the lights go out.
The power goes out.
Yeah.
And now this scene is in complete darkness.
Yes, it is. It's really funny. Miriam's like, in the dark, does this switch work? Does this switch work? Does this? And they're like, no. And then they're like, she's like, this one will work. And she's like, no. And then this one will work. And then we see a man in a sheet. And they're like, no. Well, it went out, And
then when go back to that other one.
Yeah.
And so nobody is seeing this figure standing behind the counselor. And then like, go back, and it clicks back on. Oh, no, there's a whole struggle in the darkness.
There is. So then there's a struggle. There's moaning and banging and a whole struggle in the darkness. And then the lights are back on. And the counselor guy, Dennis, he's like tangled up in the broken metal rack. And he's got like stab wounds from the pieces of metal.
One of the pieces of metal is all the way through his hand.
Yeah. So the cops show up, and Mom and Kylie, they actually are on the same page. Like, Kylie's like, no, it was a ghost. And Mom agreed with her. And they were like, Are you sure you want this to be your story? And they were, yes, this is our story. The next day, Kylie decides to get the fuck out of there. She just leaves, and Amos chases her down because obviously she still has GPS.
He got on her phone where she's at because she's
got an ankle bracelet on. Yes. He convinces her to return and talk to the murderous ghost in her bedroom.
Yeah, he draws. It's kind of a nice little scene where he's like, there's a girl who was stabbed to death in your bedroom who was lost in this world, and now she can't move on. Why do you think she's talking to you? Maybe you're a kindred spirit of this. You're stuck in this house too, and you're lost in this world.
Right.
So it's a nice little comparison.
So we get to a scene where we're back, like, listening to noises again, and she's chasing down noises or something, and we're back in the basement, and she hears something, like, going through the fence.
Yeah, I can't remember how it
we
happened,
got there.
but she is following sounds, and what clatters down in the broken furnace
Right, is a dental plate.
Yeah,
it's
like
she like gets a hammer and she smacks
like
into
a retainer?
it's like your front teeth that are connected to a retainer. Yeah, so like somebody who lost their front teeth.
Yeah, a fake tooth or two, and then the wires.
And then the wire's like a retainer.
Got it.
Yeah. So she finds this dental plate, and then hello Moto again. So her phone starts going off somewhere.
This leads her back up to her bedroom.
Goes back into her bedroom, and she opens up the floor vent, and there's a secret box with pot and a bunch of jewelry.
Yeah. This is Lizzie's stash.
It is Lizzie's stash from the 90s. So Kylie calls Amos to tell her theory. She has a theory that Lizzie was a thief and she stole a bunch of jewelry, and one of them was one of the neighbors, and he wanted it back, and so he killed her for it, and he lost his dental plate in the process.
Right. It's a fairly convoluted story.
It is. She's made some story up to explain it.
She's also going, it's funny because one of the things was worth a lot of money. She knows that because she's been binge watching Antiques Roadshow.
Yes.
She's just connecting these dots that are pretty tenuous. Amos says so.
And unfortunately, like, there's so much going on in this movie. Like, we didn't tell you that she was binge watching Antiques Roadshow. You know, like, there's just so much going on. It feels like every single scene in the movie means something.
I don't know if it's good or not, but it's one of these things where you go, well, that's kind of weird. And then you go, oh, they did try to like make this all a very cohesive thing.
Yeah.
And they maybe made it a little more complicated than it needs to be. Because there's no ghost in this movie, guys.
No, we haven't met a ghost in this movie. Okay. Anyways, so they start spying on the neighbors, and the next door neighbor, the guy who was burning stuff in barrels or whatever, is named Mads something.
Yeah.
And then we watch him actually literally take a dental plate out of his mouth.
Right.
And so, like, they've decided that Mads is the killer.
Now we have a fun little heist.
Yeah, so they make a plan to break in and steal the dental plate to compare it to the one that they found.
Amos is going to make it so the modem signal goes off on her thing so she could break in. She's only got about a half an hour to do it.
She breaks in the house. She's like, oh, he's not here. You know, I'm going to look around. And then it turns out he is there. He's asleep in a chair.
He's like passed out.
He's passed out.
It's a gross border house.
And then he has the dental plate in his mouth. And she literally sticks his fingers in his mouth trying to get the dental plate from this drunk, sleeping man out of his mouth.
And she gets it out.
But then he like wakes up and spits, and the dental plate flies to some newspapers, and she runs out of the house. And after she runs out, her and Amos are running, and Amos steps on a bear trap and gets his foot stuck. She can't get it out, and Mads is coming, and so she hides Amos under a camper shell that's just like randomly in the yard because this guy is a hoarder.
It's like a junkyard.
It is a junkyard, yeah. And then she leaves, and Amos tells her to leave, you know, so like it was a decision. Mads follows her home and she hides in a cupboard in the basement.
Mads grabs a shotgun and goes after her.
So she's in the cupboard in the basement and she hears somebody outside.
She got a pair of garden shears.
She has garden shears that are in this cupboard with her. And then she, bursts out of there and stabs him with the garden shears, and it turns out she's stabbing Graham, not Mads.
Yes, the stepfather is now on ground. It is a gory, bloody scene.
It is. We think he's dead.
Blood is shooting all over. With this amount of blood loss, he would be.
Should have been dead.
Painting her face. It is very much meant to be a serious, not funny, terrifying thing.
Well, so then we flash to Graham is in the hospital.
The mom is just...
And mom is just like, she's not talking to her.
She's just broken.
She's just like... There's a lot of eye contact communication going on, and then...
They have a silent dinner together.
And then Miriam goes back to the hospital, and Kylie feels so guilty she starts cleaning the house.
Yeah, it's guilt cleaning.
Guilt cleaning, yeah. So
this is the first time she's ever lifted a finger in this house, so she's just...
Right. So, sequentially, Amos is breaking into Mads' house looking for the dental plate. And he doesn't find it, but he does find a bunch of newspapers about the old murder of Lizzie in the 90s.
Which is always code for this is the guy who did it.
Right, exactly. And so he takes a bunch of photos, and then one of the flashes, because he's using a camera.
Oh, it's so good. This is, again, one of those awesome jump scares. So he's standing there with a tiny flash camera. This movie, I guess it's a period piece where it's like early 2000s, about 2014.
Not 2014,
because
yeah.
all the
It feels like
technology
it's like...
old.
Well, I mean, Michael, I mean...
Maybe I'm just too old to know when all this technology came out.
Yeah, I mean,
and
like,
also,
when was the iPhone come out?
I don't know. It's also New Zealand, so maybe that has something to do about...
Well, New Zealand is always behind the times.
Right.
You know that.
That's
Like, their technology is always...
I don't know.
That was a whole thing about, like, eagle versus shark, or... Their technology was always...
Eagle versus Shark. We are not doing Eagle versus Shark on this podcast.
It's not a horror movie, of course not.
I mean, it kind of is. You see Terrain Clement with those nunchucks? Anyway, so he's in this dark living room and he's taking pictures of the newspapers for evidence. And on the third one, it lights up Mads in the window just glowering. And he doesn't notice.
He doesn't see it. We see it.
A wonderful little jump scare.
Yeah.
Which is instantly diffused because when Amos comes outside, Mads is waiting for him and he's just like, did you find anything you like in there?
Yeah.
And now we've got some backstory.
So Amos accuses him of murdering Lizzie, and Mads tells him to get his story straight, and then he starts telling him about Eugene. And then,
welcome to the movie, Eugene.
So he had this relationship with a woman who had a kid, and she was in trouble, and she brought her kid over. He told them that they could stay for as long as they wanted, and she bolted and left the kid behind. Yeah. So he basically had this unwanted child. You know?
Eugene has a particular skill set. He's very skinny. He's very weird, but he can take anything apart and put it back together.
He's mechanically inclined. Yeah.
That's what Mads does with all this junk, is presumably to fix it and to sell it. So he's like, maybe the kid can be useful.
And he called it eugenized?
Yeah, eugenized.
He made a word, when something was eugenized, he changed it into something else.
Because also he'll add a twist to it sometimes. But then he came home and saw him taking the arms off a Moogie.
It's a cat.
Yeah, which I had to look up. And
I did
trying to put the arms back on, and he's
backwards.
Like, this boy isn't right.
Right.
He tries to
correct him with a chain, which
but then
beats him with a chain.
He beats him with a tire chain,
Yeah.
and Eugene disappears after that.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that Eugene is agoraphobic. He's not been out of the house in 10 years.
Right.
So for him to disappear was very odd.
And here's Eugene's room. Oh, this whole story is taking place as Mads is like moving junk to expose this hatch, which is just this crawl space.
There's a crawl space under the house is Eugene's room. He's showing, and Amos is like, can I see his room? And he's like, here you go.
So we're realizing there's a network that Eugene has been using for however long, almost 20 years now, underneath all of these properties.
Yeah. So then we flash to Kylie. She's trying to put the vacuum away. It won't fit in the closet because her mother is also kind of a hoarder. She keeps everything. Yeah. Because you never know when you're going to need it. And she's like so frustrated she can't get the vacuum, and she's like kicking it and punching it and shoving it. And then the back panel on the back of the closet gets broken, and so she can see behind it.
This is the most coincidental part of the movie.
It is pretty coincidental.
She's just trying to put away a vacuum, and right at the right time finds Eugene's.
Well, she sees a secret room, and she goes in. So then we go back to Amos, and Amos is trying to call her, but she's in the creepy room, and then the Teddy Ruxpin wakes up.
Right, of course. And he gets the Teddy Ruxpin to go kind of at the right speed. Oh, no, he takes the tape out, puts it in his tape recorder.
Yep.
And it goes at the right speed then, and it's the creepiest.
Yeah, it's young Kylie having a conversation with Eugene.
And it's very clearly a very young actor.
Yeah,
because you know, when kids are super, super young, but they're fairly eloquent still, and it just sounds like a almost giggly music.
Sure.
It sounds like that. It gave me the
she's
creeps.
like telling a story about how like I told my mom about you, but she wouldn't believe me, but that you're my friend and I would never break your confidence.
I really do see the parallels with People Under the Stairs there.
Yeah, I told you we needed to watch that movie for this. But anyways, so as he's listening to this tape, we go back to Kylie, who's exploring the secret space in her walls. And she sees Eugene in his crazy setup.
He's got like a little
TV, microwave like a wall of technology stuff.
His back is to her and he's got headphones on, and she like looks and gets scared, looks back, and he's gone. And
she's terrified. She's like,
goes
her
down,
hands are over her mouth. She's trying to keep herself
back
quiet.
Against the wall as she's terrified, and the camera follows her gaze as she looks up to the right, and Eugene is barely there in the darkness staring at her.
Yeah, he's just staring at her. Yeah, and she screams.
And there's a struggle.
And then there's a struggle, yes. And basically he's chasing her out of the house. She runs out into the driveway. She hotwires a car, and he's literally outside the glass. Like, he is chasing her. And so she's hotwired her car, and she's taken off. And then Amos shows up. Like, they pass each other on the road. Right. Amos shows up at her house trying to find her, and she's not there. So Kylie gets to the police station, and she's trying to report the guy to the cops, and they just won't believe her.
Right. This is the most Wellington Paranormal scene ever, where she's like, first we'll do a police report, and sits down and starts time. And she's like, I put away the vacuum cleaner. I found this. I found there's a guy, da-da-da-da-da. And she goes off. He goes, hang on. I put away the vacuum cleaner. And the rest was a blur. What was that? And you're just like, this is useless.
Yeah. I mean, it was to the point where I was like looking at all the cops thinking, are you in Wellington Paranormal? Are you in Wellington Paranormal? Trying to register.
It's a New Zealand show that was produced by Taki Waititi. And it's just a funny cops in a world where monsters just exist.
Yeah, it's a really funny show.
It's a pretty good show.
Yeah. So in the meantime, Mom has returned home to the mess of her trying to escape this, because she literally threw herself out of a closet.
And getting away from Eugene, she kind of throws herself in a crack in the stuff, and it turns out to be the back of their own pantry, and she spills all the food
Mom
out
just comes
into the
home
kitchen.
and sees the fucking mess. She just thinks it's just like the last time she came home and had the mess that Kylie left, and just starts cleaning up. So Amos then shows up at the police station, and he confirms Kylie's story that there's a guy in the walls. But still, no one believes her. So they go back to the house. Mom is there. Counselor shows up. The cops are there. And everybody's trying to convince her she's crazy.
Right.
And, to the point where, they're trying to convince her to go into rehab and all this kind of stuff. And she's just, so frustrated. She actually, tears away from them to go, tear apart the wall of the pantry where she had flown through. Now there's a wall behind it.
Yeah, this movie's a little long, and I really didn't like this scene at all, because why didn't she just go to the hole where the vacuum cleaner was? First and foremost, and then find a wall there.
But I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Well, it sounds like the police wouldn't let her. They put her in one place and they investigated the house.
Just as a moviegoer, I'm like, we can cut out a bunch of this and get to the same place.
Right.
Because basically, when the wall's there, one of the cops came up and was like, we've searched the house. There's nothing there except we did find this weed.
Right.
Which was Lizzie's old weed. It hasn't been touched in 100 years. And whatever.
It wasn't her. She's not high. Anyway, so the counselor Dennis is trying to convince her to go to a mental facility, that original mental facility that her lawyer was trying to get her into well before she went to her mom. Forever. Right. It's the same place. And he's trying to convince her that it has to be her idea for her to go. And, as he's having this conversation, Mom brings in tea and cookies, biscuits, or whatever they call it in New Zealand. And he bites down.
The counselor does. Dennis does, yeah.
And Mom's eating her cookies normal, but the counselor cracks his tooth or something, but then he removes a dental plate. So the counselor has a dental plate just like the one in the vent.
Right.
So Kylie says, I need to go to the bathroom or something, and she gets out of there. And
she basically teams up with Mom at this point. It's like, shit's going down. You need to keep them busy. Just do what you always do, which Mom goes in and just starts talking.
So Mom shows up in the basement, and she's like, what are you doing here? I told you not to let them out of your sight, And she's like, well, Dennis had to go to the bathroom, and I came to go find you. And she's like, well, we need to go back up there. And to get back up there, there's no cop.
Right. So
nobody's in the room.
Kylie has, in this time, run down to the basement to go through the files that were down there, and found that Dennis was a young counselor,
a social worker in training. Yeah, it was his very first job.
At the house way back when Lizzie was there. So now we've got Dennis in the place and a dental plate in his mouth. So we're now
Well, and she's trying to tell her mom that, like, hey, have you noticed that the only person that Eugene has tried to hurt was this counselor? Yeah. I think he's the one who killed Lizzie.
Right.
You know, because he has the dental plate, all
Mom
that kind of stuff.
also just learned of Eugene's existence,
yes,
too. So
this is true. And she thinks that Eugene's just been trying to warn us the whole time. So then she's like, yes, like you said, do what you always do, what you do best. Talk the fucking shit out of these people.
They've gone back up now and the people aren't there anymore.
Right.
The cop and Dennis have disappeared. They go back upstairs and find Dennis coming out of the bathroom.
Yeah. And they confront him about getting beat up by a 15-year-old girl on his first job.
Yeah.
And he gets so angry. You can see it. And he decides to attack them.
Yeah, now it's...
So he's got a xylophone and she's got a butcher knife.
Well,
and
they have armed up before going back up there, before finding Dennis.
They did.
There's a butcher knife. Ma and Kylie has an old school cheese grater as a
on her
gauntlet
arm.
on her
Yes.
arm. And I was like, motherfucker, that is the coolest thing. Evil Dead Rise. You didn't do the cheese grater first.
No.
Housebound did the cheese grater first.
Yes. Well, she's got the knife and she stabs it and he catches it with a xylophone. She loses the knife and then they're on the floor and she starts grating his face with her arm.
It's awesome.
So then
Dennis is getting fucked
Then
up.
he gets the advantage, so he's on top. So then Mom shoves a laundry basket on him that goes all the way down his arms.
This whole thing is so ridiculous.
It is so funny. And then he cuts through the because he's picked up the knife, so he's cut through the laundry basket. He's got one arm out of the laundry basket. And he's like trying to chase them. It's very Monty Python at this point, it feels like.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
So Mom and Kylie run. And he's chasing, and then they run into the bathroom, and then as they shut the door, he falls down the stairs. And so they're in the bathroom, and they turn around, and they see something in the shower, and they open it up, and the cop is dead in the shower.
Yeah, he's got a corkscrew in the back of his neck.
Right. So then the counselor, Dennis, he shows back up with an electric, like a power saw.
Yeah,
and
cutting through the door.
He's trying to cut through the door.
And the power goes out.
Yep. Yes.
So now the house is turning against Dennis.
Yes. Kylie asks for scissors to cut the ankle monitor, because if she cuts the ankle monitor, it'll send a signal, and they can get help. So Mom hands her the tiniest little fucking nail scissors. And she's just like, what? It was so funny. And Mom's like, oh yeah, you're right. And so then they go to open the cupboard to get a bigger pair of scissors. And Eugene's just like hanging out in the cupboard.
Eugene pops out. And it's not like a big cupboard. It's like under the
sink cupboard in your bathroom.
Eugene has basically a tunnel into every room in this house and Matt's house and whatever. Mm-hmm. Basically, he's in all of the walls.
Right. So
he's in all of our walls.
So they go to follow him into the walls. And Mom gets stuck.
And we also need to paint the picture of Eugene. Okay. He has it's kind of goofy makeup, but he's albino white, shock white hair that sticks straight up like Rob Zombie's.
It's just like bedhead that you never get over.
I kept seeing like an early Rob Zombie music video.
I don't know what you're referring to.
White beard and then these like black, like big
coal-rimmed eyes,
circled eyes. Mm-hmm. And that's Eugene.
That's Eugene. Okay. Well,
and of course
anyways.
he's wearing
So they go to follow Eugene into the walls and Mom's hips get stuck. And so Kylie is like, shit, Dennis is getting further into the room. So she grabs hairspray and a lighter and she sprays him with fire and pushes Mom into the wall. And Mom gets in, and then as she's getting in, Dennis has finally broken through the door, and he stabs her in the leg, and he's like vicious about it. He like starts turning it. Like he just wants to hurt her. He's just like rotating this knife in her leg as she screams.
I dig about this tonally is that we go from like arms sticking out of a laundry basket on the head to this man is destroying this woman's calf, and it is bloody and it is gory and it feels real.
Yeah, I know he's a psychopath.
It's like when Graham got it in the stomach, or like suddenly like, oh, we're not playing anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of this like roller coaster throughout this whole thing.
Sure. So they get in and they slam this reinforced door that suddenly is there between the wall.
Eugene
it's a Z door with metal brackets.
I don't know what that was. But I just chalk that to Eugene has behind the scenes like
built a bunker.
A weird, bunker's great word for it.
And so then Dennis like moves the cabinet out of the way and starts trying to break the door down.
Yeah,
and then the doorbell rings.
By the way, this doorbell is like the Hello Moto thing.
Yeah,
it is what
it's very distinct.
Grandma Logan's chime for her clock was on the hour. That doorbell chime.
Okay.
I keep finding these grandma things in all these movies.
So Dennis puts the knife in his pocket and decides to go downstairs and answer the door.
And it's Amos.
And he tells Amos a story about how Eugene was in the walls and he attacked him and he was a fool. He didn't believe them, yada, yada, yada. He did his best to make it seem.
But he's a terrible actor.
He's terrible. And then he's like, Amos has this tracker and he's like, what's that? And Amos is like, well, I could track the bracelet on her. And you can see he's interested. Meantime, Kylie's trying to yell at the wall that it's Dennis, the counselor. You know, Dennis is the murderer. He can't hear.
I keep wanting to jump to a part, but I'm waiting for you to get there. I don't know where you're going.
So he goes into the closet, right?
Amos?
Yeah.
Okay, I love this scene.
The vacuum closet.
Yeah, so Amos is tracking the thing, and behind him, Dennis is walking with his butcher knife. Amos gets down and is pulling stuff out. He's like, I need something to wedge this open with. And he turns around and just takes Dennis's butcher knife out of his hand and goes, no, that's too thin, and then throws it down. He has no idea that Dennis is behind him, sneaking to kill him.
Trying to kill him.
He just turns, takes it, no.
Right, so then Dennis, bashes him over the head. Amos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Amos is out.
Amos is out. So Kylie gets into Eugene's central hub, you know.
It's Eugene's lair.
Yeah, his lair, yes. And she finds her phone and she grabs her phone and tries to call. I guess 111 is 911 in New Zealand.
And it turns on the microwave.
And it turns on the microwave.
The phone now only turns on the microwave in Eugene's lair.
It doesn't call emergency services.
So on the wall here is a painting that Eugene has made, and it's of Kylie.
Yeah.
And Kylie picks it up and goes, first Kylie
is really upset at it.
Gives Eugene a whole fucking thing about how you've been here the whole time. Why didn't you save us? Why didn't you help?
Yeah.
All this stuff. Well, this kid is damaged and whatever. But he retreats and puts his headphones back on because he doesn't want to hear Kylie.
He can't deal with the emotions.
Anymore.
It just,
So Kylie sees a painting and is like, is this me? And he immediately goes, yeah, I have more. They're good. It's like every artist. And is this the first time Eugene's spoken?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Just one little oh, that's a good painting. He's like, oh, I have a bunch more. And he starts showing her basically all of these.
Drawing, big moments in her own life.
Big moments in Kylie's life.
Her first day of school.
This is when this happened, and this is when you yelled at your mom about this, and this is when you left us forever.
Yeah, and this is us waiting for you to come back.
Yeah.
It was very sweet. It made us oh, he's actually really sweet. He's thinks he's part of this family. So.
Well, and also it leads up to answer her question. He single tear drops and he just says, I was only small.
Yeah, I know.
Heartbreaking.
It was very, So then he offers a place they can hide. He's like, I know a place we can hide. And then he grabs a sheet and puts it on and stands against the wall.
That's his hiding space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, it's super, super sad. It kind of gets me choked up.
And then suddenly he's gurgling, and she moves the sheet up off him, and he's stabbed with
Dennis has put
a fire poker right through the middle.
Fire poker through the wall.
Then Dennis breaks down the wall and tries to paint himself as just wanting to help them. I just wanted to help you and help these people in the past, you know? And Kylie throws a piss bucket at him because Eugene has a piss bucket in the walls because he doesn't have a bathroom. Kylie and her mom crawl up to the roof. There's a ladder to the roof.
Ladder goes straight up.
So Dennis still has the tracker, and he's using the tracker to track her. So he's coming up on Kylie using the tracker, and mom comes up behind him and pushes him off the roof, but he's hanging by the gutters. And then Kylie just breaks a roof tile and throws it at his head, and he falls. So then we're in the kitchen. And they're calling the cops. Mom's like, what should I say to the cops? And Kylie is giving some suggestions, but then Dennis shows up and punches Kylie and starts
we have a fake out kill and a return of Dennis.
Yeah, and Dennis starts trying to strangle, wraps the phone cord around Mom's throat and is strangling Mom, and Kylie's knocked out.
Kylie's knocked out.
Then we see the cupboard open, and Eugene's little finger comes out and taps Kylie on the head.
He just taps her on the head.
taps her on the head.
And then goes back in and then reaches back out with a meat fork.
With a fork. Same kind of meat fork that killed Elizabeth.
That's the reed. It's the murder weapon that
killed
Lindsay.
Kylie stabs Dennis under the chin with a meat fork. But the meat fork is not just a meat fork. It is connected to a bunch of wires.
It's now hooked up to the electricity of the house.
So then we see Eugene go, turn on the electricity on this meat fork.
Dennis's head explodes.
Yeah, and then Dennis's head explodes. Yeah.
And 7 months later.
Yeah, 7 months later.
We just end on a fucking sitcom.
Yeah, and then, Amos comes.
Amos shows up. Graham comes around the corner. He's still alive.
He's still good, yeah.
And then something gets fucked up with the power.
Well, so Amos is cutting off the ankle bracelet, and Mom's trying to record it with a little video recorder. And she's like, it just went black. Why did it go black? And she's trying to look at it. And the mom's like, I put it on the charger all night. And then she's like, Eugene! And yells.
That was loud.
Sorry. Apologies.
So yeah, it's just like this fist to this guy. Oh, Eugene.
Oh, Eugene.
Eugene again. It's the weirdest fucking
It is. It's like now.
You thought it was going to freeze frame and then just credits are going to come up.
That was the end of the movie.
Yeah, it ends with a song called Angel by Space Waltz, which is kind of a little
you looked it up?
Yeah. I look up all of the This stuff doesn't just beam into my brain, Lindsay. I look stuff up. It was kind of a weird little Morrissey Curie kind of
Okay,
banger.
okay.
And they released one album in 1974, and their second album came out last year.
Wow.
It is
Wow.
weird.
Like,
weird.
like
2023.
between, it's like when this movie came out,
I
there
was-
was no second album.
I was not born yet. Their second album came out last year. And I think it's just like a reunion stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were kind of a one-hit wonder in
Sure.
New Zealand only.
Yeah, okay. That makes
It
sense.
sounds like.
But it was a really fun movie.
Yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah.
It's super twisty and turny.
Everything
You know,
may mean something.
you think it's a ghost, you think it's this, and then you get a real killer. It's tight enough, but it didn't have to be quite so clever, I don't think.
So I do have one question.
Yeah.
Why did Dennis murder the girl? She beat him up?
Yeah.
That's it.
That's literally
Humiliated
it.
him.
She humiliated him.
Which makes a lot more sense than Kylie's idea of like, they stole a thing and then
Yeah.
in a rage to get it back, like killed her, but then left the thing that they went to get back
Right.
in the room. It's just this young psycho humiliated and
By a girl.
it's a rage killing.
It's a rage killing,
He
yeah.
beat her, he bit her, he stabbed her 67 times. And Dennis probably could have a bunch of bodies in his
Probably does.
Yeah.
He probably does.
He's probably a serial
if he
killer.
killed, like 20 years prior, he killed somebody and stabbed them 67 times out of anger. There's no way he's existed in 20
Yeah.
years without doing that
And
again.
it's just a part of the story that didn't get told is that Dennis probably has a whole body count.
Yeah.
And
Well, I would-
not that kind of body count you grosses.
I would think that since he made that comment, like, I'm just trying to help people, it would probably be any person he was trying to help who he didn't feel like was following
Yes.
the path.
Yes.
And he'd be
He's-
like, well, you're dead.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like there's a whole like type of serial killer that's like a missionary killer, I think they're called, where they try to
Save people.
save you, and in doing so,
And if you don't get saved the way they want you to be saved.
well, it's always an excuse to kill you. And they just traffic in the most vulnerable of society, is pulling a prostitute off the street or a drug addict and killing them under the guise of being a savior.
Right.
So yeah, there's the Homebound Part 2, Dennis's story, where we just follow him killing people.
Or we see the original Lizzie story or something.
No, we don't need any of that. We don't need Dennis's story. We don't need Lizzie's story. We pretty much covered it all in Housebound. I love this movie. Check it out.
Yeah.
I think we exhausted it. So it's time to ask, is there a question from John?
Who do you think is the coolest, good or bad, character in a horror movie?
I'm going with Sammy Kerr from Trick or Treat. He's a hair metal, electric-powered zombie singer. You've never
Oh,
seen...
you're not talking Trick or Treat.
I'm not talking Trick or Treat. I'm
Trick
talking
or
Trick
Treat.
or Treat. His name is Sammy Kerr, and he is awesome.
Okay. Why is he awesome?
He is a deathless, electro-powered hair metal singer and guitar shredder.
So, unfortunately, I've actually never thought about this before. Like, what's my coolest
Huh?
character in a
I've never
horror
thought
movie?
about this before either.
And, like, my first instinct was a horrible place. I don't feel like that's a good place to be. Because my first place was that Elliot Page movie.
Oh, Hard Candy?
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good place.
I mean, I do love.
I have
Hard
never seen Hard
Candy.
Candy.
how have you never seen Hard Candy?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, but I guess I'm going to go with my instinct.
It's Patrick
That-
Wilson. Is
Patrick Wilson's the
That's
bad
why I've
guy.
never seen Hard Candy. I
Because it's
fucking
Patrick
hate
Wilson.
Patrick
Yeah,
Wilson.
yeah.
Well, I mean, he's tortured most of the movie.
He is, and that's why I'm
I
like...
just don't like his face.
Well,
Is
that's
his
why I'm
face
like, I
emotional?
can't really, like, my instinct was that was the coolest person, but the rest of me is like, but she literally tortured him.
That's
And
allowed.
so that wasn't...
Sammy Kerr is the bad guy in Trick or Treat. He kills a bunch of people.
Okay, well...
So he's not a good guy in that movie.
Well, that's why I was like, my coolest character is the girl, the main character in A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
Oh, God, that's such a good answer.
Which is like, I
Not
feel
seen
like
that
it's
movie.
the same sort of vibe as like Hard
Hard
Candy.
candy? Okay.
Because she goes around. First of all, she's like a manic pixie dream girl because she likes all
Kind of.
these obscure bands. She rides a skateboard. She's really thin and wafy and beautiful.
She looks like the incarnation of Emily the Strange from
Yeah.
Hot Topic stores.
And they're in Iran, and the whole movie is shot in like black and white. It's
beautiful.
But her whole thing is that she literally goes around luring out these men who are terrible to women.
Yeah.
And then she's a vampire and she murders them. She's like dispensing justice. There's this whole scene where she runs into like a little boy in
Yeah.
the village.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, and she like turns to him and she was like, "You had better grow up to be a good man. If you don't, I'll have to come back here."
Yeah,
Like-
it's more subtle and like sinister. She's like, because he's a little shithead.
Yeah.
And then she leans down and she goes, "Are you a good boy?" And then she gets closer and goes, "Be a good boy."
Yeah.
And he's just terrified.
Yeah, because if you're not a good boy, if you turn into a bad man, she's just like, so that's my coolest
Did we also
character.
mention she's a vampire?
Yeah, she's a
It
vampire.
was mentioned.
Okay, sorry. I
But
didn't.
it's like, that's like my favorite genre. That's my thing. Some woman
That's a good call.
Some woman getting revenge. Okay,
punishing.
yeah. Punishing.
Those who have
I guess
wronged
we
her.
both have that issue.
Yeah,
Hey,
so
this
when
is the
you-
Black Christmas,
when
everybody.
You
If
said
you want,
hard candy, I was like, yes, hard candy.
go back to last episode if you want. Maybe where some of this comes from. I like a rock and rolly guy.
You like the bad guy.
I like a bad boy who's
Although ours
really
are-
good at guitar.
Ours are both like questionably heroes. They're
Yeah.
like a
Yours-
Anti-heroes?
a
Yours are-
sociopath, but like if you still have a little bit of morality.
Yours are finally meting out one fucking iota of justice in this bankrupt, terrible society. Did I say that Sammy Kerr sings really good too?
No, you did not.
Well, at least there's that.
Yeah.
He probably sleeps in a bed that's shaped like a race car. That's it, guys. We're done with this. I want to thank producer Jamie for doing all of our producing stuff. You can find her at Cherry Street Studios on Instagram and also cherrystreetstudios.com. Thank you to Kevin MacLeod for all of our music. He does all of our cool sounds. All of our art is done by Lindsay and myself. You can find that and the show and all of the stuff. T-shirts, stickers, like and subscribe, all of it at creaturepop.com. That's creature with a K, pop.com. Until next time, thanks, John.
Thanks, John.